For people who are in love or who are happily married, divorce might sound like a sad state of affairs. No doubt, divorce is surely a sad thing to happen, but at times its end result goes in favor of one or both of the parties concerned. Dr. Wayland, in his Elements of Moral Science, says, in the act of marriage, two persons under the most solemn circumstances are thus united, and they enter into a mutual contract, thus to live in respect to each other. This relation, having been established by God, the contract thus entered into has all the solemnity of an oath. Hence, he who violates it is guilty of a twofold crime. First, the violation of the law of chastity, and second, of the law of veracity, veracity pledged under the most solemn circumstances. Turning to the Jews, the scribes of the school of Hillel had almost turned divorce into a duty, even when there was no ground for it but incompatibility of temper or other lesser faults. At this time, there were two famous divinity and philosophical schools among the Jews, that of Shammai and that of Hillel. On the question of divorce, the school of Shammai maintained that a man could not legally put away his wife except for adultery. The school of Hillel taught that a man might put away his wife for a multitude of other causes, and when she did not find grace in his sight, that is, when he saw any other woman that pleased him better. Rabbi Akiba said, if a man saw a woman handsomer than his own wife, he might put away his wife, because it is said in the law, if she find not favor in his eyes. Josephus, the celebrated Jewish historian, in his life tells us with almost coolness and indifference, about this time I put away my wife, who had borne me 3 children, not being pleased with her manners. These cases are enough to show to what a scandalous and criminal excess these matters was carried among the Jews. In the United States, about a century ago, in the General Statute of Minnesota, we find the following. A divorce from the bonds of matrimony may be adjudged and decreed by the district court on suit brought in the county where parties, or either of them, reside for either of the following causes. First, adultery. Second, impotency. Third, cruel and inhuman treatment. Fourth, when either party subsequent to the marriage has been sentenced to imprisonment in the state prison. Fifth, willful desertion of one party by the other for the term of 3 years next to preceding the filing of the complaint. Sixth, habitual drunkenness for the space of 1 year immediately preceding the filing of the complaint. In modern times, the top reasons for divorce are infidelity, that is, extramarital affairs largely due to the cause of differences in sexual appetites and lack of emotional intimacy. Money, everything from different spending habits and financial goals. Lack of communication, not being able to communicate effectively quickly leads to resentment and frustration for both parties. Constant arguing, incessant arguing kills many relationships. Weight gain, in some cases a significant amount of weight causes the other spouse to become less physically attractive. Unrealistic expectations and lack of intimacy, not feeling connected. This can be from a lack of physical or emotional intimacy, and it isn't always about sex. Lack of equality, when one partner feels that they take on more responsibility in the marriage, it can alter the view of the other person and lead to resentment. Abuse, physical and emotional. The option to end the marriage is always available, and if we remain in our marriage, it is of our own choosing. If when making compromises in marriage we feel set upon and compelled, the marriage can drain our sense of self and well-being. If an individual is living constantly in fear of abuse, denied his or her rights, stifled and suffocated, distanced from family and friend against his or her will, or the individual is the only one who tries to make the marriage work, not in sync with his spouse, and no longer have anything in common, always criticized, degraded, nagged, ridiculed, and intimidated by his partner, already divorced emotionally, and all efforts to rekindle love have failed, always fighting and facing problems with the spouse, and counseling don't help. If, however, we remember that marriage is a choice and that in it we choose freely to give of ourselves, it actually reinforces our sense of self and independence because the choice to give can be made only when we are independent enough to make the choices. Religion tells us marriage is the mother of the world and preserves kingdoms and fills cities and churches and heaven itself. Celibate, like the fly in the heart of an apple, dwells in a perpetual sweetness, but it sits alone and is confined and dies in singularity. But marriage, like the useful bee, builds a house and gathers sweetness from every flower, and labors and unites into societies and republics, and sends out colonies and feeds the world with delicacies, and obeys their kings and keep orders, and exercises many virtues, and promotes the interests of mankind, and is that state of good things to which God designed the present constitution of the world. Single life makes man in one instance to be like angels, but marriage in very many things makes the chaste pair to be like Christ. Christ descended from his Father's bosom and contracted his divinity with flesh and blood and married our nature, and we became a church, the spouse of the bridegroom, which he cleansed with his blood and gave her his Holy Spirit for a dowry and heaven for a jointure, begetting children unto God by the gospel. This union should not be entered into lightly or rashly. It involves all the happiness of this life and much of that to come. The union demands congeniality of feeling and disposition, of rank in life, of temper, similarity of acquirements, of age, of talent, intimate acquaintance. For our young men, it is fair to say, if you are for pleasure, marry. If you prize rosy health, marry. A good wife is heaven's best gift to man, is angel of mercy, minister of graces innumerable, is gem of many virtues, is casket of jewels, our voice is sweetest music, our smiles is brightest day, our kiss the guardian of his innocence, our arms the pearl of his safety, the balm of his health, the balsam of his life, our industry is surest wealth, our economy is safest steward, our lips is faithful counselors, our bosom the softest pillow of his cares, our prayers the ablest advocates of heaven's blessings on his head. Whilst we are in this world for a little time, it is only fair that we give our children and our descendants good directions and leadership and make good role models. We do not wish to have these children come of age and speculate and antagonize and criticize and tyrannize the earth because we failed. Well, that's it, folks.